All right, it's 1 o'clock, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started. For those of you that actually all of y'all are pretty new to me, so my name is Tim Terrell. I'm one of the backend instructors. Um, I went through Turing in 2017 through the backend program. Worked at two companies before joining Turing full time. Those companies were Crown Peak and via TRM, where I did basically full stack development at both of them. Yeah, but that's a little bit about me. Uh, if you ever want to know more or have like questions about like these sessions or things that we talk about here, like I always say like my Slack DMs are always open, so feel free to holler at me. All right, cool. So let's jump into this. So the first thing that I want to do is just go over what to expect this mod for PD. So let's see this one. Yeah. So today we're going to talk about habits. And so we're going to build on some of the mod one sessions that y'all had. And I'm obviously leading this one. It'll be a combination of myself, Brian, the other backend instructor, Travis, one of your front end instructors for Mod 2, and then Tracy's going to lead 2 sessions. So I believe you have a total of 5 sessions there. It's habits week 1. Professional storytelling and branding week 2, so kind of getting some more practice around having a pitch really on yourself, which is tough. And I remember going through it and being like, this is hard, but it's kind of like coding. You just have to get the reps in. Yeah, mod 2 week 3 job search strategies, which is kind of like this idea of, okay, the job search is very daunting and scary, and there's a lot of different kind of routes you can take. And I think the idea here is, how do we become more efficient? Cool. And then I've got another one on habits, because I would think of like habits as like little hacks that you can kind of create for yourself to just become a more efficient software developer, a more efficient like working human. I'd say, like, when you're doing work, like, how do you want to do it? And so we'll talk about some of those strategies today. But yeah, week 4 will build on that. And then, yeah, networking and outreach. That could be a lot longer than one session, but that's what we'll talk about in week 5. And all of these are on the career dev site. If you look at my URL up here, I'm on the mod 2, and then these are all the prompts that I just went through. So I recommend like keeping up with this stuff every week, because it can be pretty daunting to already have a ton of stuff to do in week 5, and then come to this and know that you have to like do all these prompts and try to remember what we talked about in the session. So I think we have an hour of work time on the calendar generally, and I know what we're doing in backend this time is you all are going to like share some of your reflections from the previous week in that work time, so that you all can kind of hold each other accountable in that. Any questions on um, any of this stuff that's coming up or this session? Cool. Okay, no questions. That's all good. I think so. Wait, front end, do y'all have access to the slides and like these links? Because I know I posted them on the back end calendar, but y'all, yeah, cool. Yep, Travis and David are usually on it. Just wanted to make sure. Okay, so yeah, let's jump into today's lesson. So I'm gonna work kind of off the slides, but it's not really. Um, it's gonna. I'll bounce around a little bit, just because I want these sessions to be more about you all getting a chance to share and to discuss with each other than just hearing from me. Um, so yeah, so we're gonna do like the learning goals for today are. Um, basically build awareness on your current habits, kind of like use some hacks of making it attractive and easy to improve or create habits, and then implement this idea of temptation bundling, which you might not be familiar with yet, or you might, but it's kind of like this way that we can motivate ourselves to do our habits every day, and then apply some new strategies within like how you design your environment, so that you can like avoid procrastination. Okay, so I think, yep, we went through that. Yep, that's what I just said. Cool. Um, yeah, so this is kind of like building off of mod one. So reviewing kind of like what how we make these habits, how we bring them into fruition. So go ahead and think to yourself maybe about, actually, let's do this. What do you remember from the mod one sessions? What stands out to you? Because I wasn't in those sessions, so I'd love to hear from y'all. Anyone have anything that stands out about what you learned from the mod one habit session? And you can use the raise hand feature, or I can just call on one of you. Thanks, Adam.
All right. Yeah, I just remember they constantly pushed palms, 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 get a palm timer, get a palm app. And then a few folks recommended a book, and I'm blanking on the title, but it's about learning math and science. And I'm sure someone in the group knows it. And again, that book's all about taking palms. So that's one thing that definitely stuck out.
Great. Appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, let's hear from Max.
I think a big part was just being aware of your habits is definitely the first step to changing them. And like really looking at yourself and like writing the thing down 3 times will really make you think about it more.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a huge thing. I think awareness in general is kind of this step one to making any kind of meaningful change, right? Um, yeah, love that example. Michael, go ahead.
Yeah, to build off what Max was saying, like the awareness, but also about like changing careers and getting a new sense of self as a developer, like getting an idea of what type of developer you want to become. And that really stuck with me, and still kind of getting clarity on that, working on that. But yeah, that was a big part, I think, for myself personally.
Totally. Yeah, and that kind of leads into this identity-based habits review that I want to take a look at, where the idea is kind of like, actually, I'm not going to give it away. So let's go here. No, we're going to skip this one. No, we're going to skip that one too. Okay, so cancel both of those slides because I want to talk about identity. So who kind of like remembers what we mean when we say identity-based habits versus outcome-based habits? Anyone want to take a crack at that? Yeah, Eric, go ahead.
If I'm remembering right, identity-based habit change was looking at myself becoming the person I want to be rather than simply adjusting a habit. So instead of going, I want to work out more, saying, I am changing my identity to be an athlete. And as an athlete, I do this more consistently.
Totally. Yep, exactly. And that's kind of the approach, that we want y'all to take, as software developers, right? It's not, I want to be a professional software developer. It's like, well, no, I am a professional software developer, and I'm on this road to get my first professional job, and kind of change careers. But the first step is saying, all right, I am this professional software developer, and let me also think about what are the habits that make for a successful professional software developer, and let me start to implement those one by one. Cool. So I want to take a crack. I actually don't really want to do these two that are in the slides, but I wanted to talk about habits that I let go to shit over the 2-week intermission versus habits that I actually kept up over the 2-week intermission, because I think that that's pretty relevant to where we're all at right now. And I'd love to hear from a couple more of you. I'll get us kicked off and say habit that I let go to shit was my bedtime. Just like my sleep schedule was kind of varying quite a bit and not this like pretty steady routine that it had been. So that that just made me less productive, I'd say, over the break, where I know that I need to get up early to be productive, and I didn't do that like every day. But that also wasn't my goal of the break. But now I'm here on Monday and I'm like, okay, now this is a little bit harder than it was before. And then one that I kept up with is just getting exercise for my dog every day. Every day, made that a priority and made sure that like we got outside and she got some exercise. Cool. How about y'all? I'd love to hear from a few of you. Haven't heard from any of the women yet, so would love for y'all to, yeah, would love to hear from some of y'all. And yeah, I'll wait. Cool. Kristen, go ahead.
Yeah, definitely just like my schedule in general went to shit. Just not having any structure was really hard. And then when I did do coding Turing work, I just didn't take palms. I just forgot completely the entire process of taking breaks, and then would be like, why am I so tired? Why is this so hard? And then I'd be like, oh, because I've been doing this for 3 hours and I haven't stopped. And then I would close things down for a while and walk away. But yeah, just that lack of structure suddenly and very aggressively totally threw me off balance. But at least I acknowledged it, I guess.
I love it. No, it's a couple things, right? Awareness around it, and then addressing it when you realize I've worked way too hard for 3 hours and haven't given my body a break. And I'm similar. Like if I don't have the structure, basically my systems usually fall apart. Yeah. Anyone else have something maybe that they kept up during the break that they were like, oh, this habit's pretty ingrained because I'm doing it all the time. Yeah, Catherine.
Yeah, I'd say the only habit that I was able to keep up over the break was actually my sleep schedule. Like I was getting tired at the same time that I would have, and so it was pretty easy to keep that up. Everything else though, not so much.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's important, right? I think like that's probably the number one thing that leads to everything else, at least in my opinion, is like, all right, did you wake up at the time you expected, and did you go to sleep at the time that you wanted to in order to be fresh for the next day? Cool. All right. I'm gonna talk a little bit. Let's skip through these. Yeah, so I think this is kind of like just this idea of defining a habit, and it's really, yeah, if we want to take a computer science approach, it's a personal algorithm, and really designing a feedback loop that positively reinforces whatever these behaviors are that we want to enact and keep. And yeah, I think like the idea is the more effective habits you can put into place, the more like cognitive energy you really free up for yourself, and the more things that you can really, I think, just get done and be efficient at. Cool. What else? Yep, we talked a little bit about outcome versus identity here, and we define that. And yeah, I don't think there's anything I want. Oh yeah, I like this idea of like this adding and updating to your identity. Like software developer is pretty broad, but maybe I want to say like, okay, I'm an empathetic software developer, and this is what empathetic software developers do. This is what I've seen them do. This is and now one of my favorite things with habits is borrowing when I see people do things really well and be like, ooh, that's like super smart, or that's really empathetic, or I love the way that you did whatever behavior. And then I like write myself a little note like, remember this because this is someone that was better than you at whatever it is that I'm trying to get better at or become. Anyone have anything to add to that? Yeah, Gabriel, go ahead.
Kind of thinking back to like the habits that were lost and gained also during the break. I think something that I realized in terms of like shifting our identities is that how important taking a break was. I had like made all these plans to like, this is what I'm gonna do this day, this is what I'm gonna do this day. And I was camping at that time and I like brought all my materials with me. And I was like, what the hell am I doing? Like, I am a software developer, but it's also important for me to like take a breather, see patterns elsewhere, and like go from there. And I think like being able to acknowledge that process and being willing to like get rid of things that don't work for you, even though it works for someone else, is incredibly important. Because I think right now we're bombarded by a lot of like advice, and like being willing to be like, hey, that advice doesn't work for me is just as important as to being like, that is what I need to apply to my life.
Yeah, I love that. There's a lot that I like about what you said. I think like number one, it's hard to shift from Turing workload to just a break, right? And just hard to just shift your personal like being to being like, it's okay that I'm doing less right now, and that is something that I should, give myself the space to do. And then yeah, checking things that don't work for you, right? Like we're going to give you a ton of advice. I'm going to give you some advice in this session, and not all of it's going to be for you, right? And that's okay. And that's really part of being proactive and taking control of like, hey, what do I need, and how do I get more of that and get less of what I don't need? So love that. Cool. I feel like there's one more thing I wanted to add about what you said. If it comes back to me, then I'll say it. Okay, cool. I think, yeah, this idea of the goal based versus system based. It's like I think the athlete example is a good one. Like I want to work out more because then I'll be more fit and I want to be in shape. It's like, okay, that's great. But like, I think like saying like, I am an athlete, and, for an athlete to have success, they have to have great systems in place to continuously find motivation when it is lacking, and do the hard things that go along with like the hard exercise when where they're not having the best day. And how do they do that? It's having a great system with support, right? Like a trainer or a team that's supporting them, and then also basically having some of this stuff on autopilot, right? Their sleep schedule is probably on autopilot. When they eat and what they eat has already been decided before the day. What times they work out is decided, and really limiting the distractions that can get in the way of doing the thing that needs to happen that day. Cool. Yeah, this one is classic. The goals being restrictive, because I fall into this pattern a lot where I'm like, if I just get to this point in my career, or just get to this number in my salary, everything is going to be great. And it just never is going to work out that way. Like I can tell you from literally having my dream job currently, that you still want more, and you still think about other jobs, and you think about what else could be, and that's okay. That's why this goal-based thing is not that useful. But if I think about like, hey, today I have an opportunity to be a better instructor. Today I have an opportunity to be a better software developer. I know how to do those things. And, it's prep. It's actually, instructing. It's actually working on code and building projects. And if I dedicate some time to do that today, then I know I'll get where I want to be. Or eventually I'll be getting closer to who I want to be, not where I want to be, I think is the better way to break that down. Cool. Anyone have that stuff to add on this point? Okay. Yeah, I kind of touched on this earlier about this freeing up cognitive space. It's like the more automatic things can become, the better I don't know, I want to say the better, but yeah, the more space you have to do new learning. I remember I went through the back end program and I had to repeat mod 1, and I basically didn't have any habits the first time and like didn't work hard enough is why I repeated. And then the second time I had a system in place where every like morning for 30 to 45 minutes I, you know, did a group of exercises on like basic data structures in Ruby just to like basically get warmed up in the morning. And it was literally like stretching or something before you go like play in a game if you're an athlete. And that just that habit being in place and knowing I was going to do it, and then getting really quick on the keyboard and getting really comfortable with basic data structures allowed me to be successful in, you know, the learning that is required for doing the tough projects that we ask y'all to do. Okay, I think, yeah, I wanted to get to this. So let's take some time to kind of get ourselves geared up for this first breakout room. So I want you to think about, you can think about the habits from last module that I think a way to break this down is like ineffective versus effective habits, and then how you are going to either, you know, create more effective habits or limit the ineffective habits from, you know, the previous module. And you can even take, this can run into the break because obviously we're probably the break is easier to think about than the previous mod. But yeah, I'll stop talking. We're not going to take 8 minutes. We're going to take 5 minutes, and then we'll yeah, we'll go into some breakout groups. Any questions about what I'm asking you to do? Okay, I'm going to go mute and video off, and feel free to do the same if that works best for you. I'll bring us back at 26. All right. Looks like we've got everyone back from the breakout rooms. I'd love to just follow up and kind of prod on what y'all talked about. I'd love to hear a group or two share something that they heard from someone else that is not them, that maybe they're going to borrow or that resonated with you or any of that. Yeah, Alex, go ahead.
This was an idea that Boone just shared with me. I was talking about the idea of trying to make sure I pre-read the next day's lessons. And one way that he came up with to tap into that natural affinity to procrastinate or like to like wander off when you get stuck is he pulls up those tabs ahead of time. So they're just in his browser. So the first thing he procrastinates to is reading the next day's lesson, which I thought was.
That is a very like efficient approach, I feel like, which is good. Cool. Anyone else have anything they want to share with the whole group that, yeah, go ahead, Drew.
One thing that somebody in my group mentioned and I thought resonated really well with me is like ask questions more. And the specific thing that Elsa said was like, you might know something like 75%, but it's okay to ask about that 25% that you don't understand and just do it instead of sitting there and struggling in silence.
Totally.
Yes, I do that.
I get it. And yeah, I would say like in this Zoom environment, it's asking questions even when you're uncomfortable is like, that is a tough habit to build, and one that is gonna be super important to how quickly and efficiently you're able to learn and fill in those gaps. So I think that's a great example. Cool. Anyone else? Yeah, go ahead, Allison.
Sure. So we talked some about like the difficulty in balancing like all of the different things that we know are important, but like PD specifically can be hard to like find the time to dedicate to the career journal or practicing mythicals or JS Fun in this case, or whatever else it is that you're trying to balance with everything else. So one of the things for me, like I will like think that I'm going to just spend this amount of time on something and then like definitely not feel done with it and like let it overflow. So one of the things that I'm working on is more intentional time blocking to separate those things out and like make sure that I hit each of those things in a day. And instead of just having this list of things that like constantly get overridden by each other as they overflow like that, like writing in the actual amounts of time that I'm dedicating to each one of those things and committing to that.
Yeah, I love that. Time blocking is something that I do. I believe in, and I do well sometimes, but it's so effective. And I think I did it better at Turing when I had just like more on my plate. But even like we have these large chunks on the calendar, for your mods for the schedules. But for you, I would say a better way to chunk that up is in 10 to 15-minute blocks and say like, hey, for this 10 minutes, I'm going to just read through the article. For this 15 minutes, I'm going to experiment like with like the problems or the exercises, but I'm not going to like, spend more than 15 minutes if I end up getting stuck, or if I go down a rabbit hole. It's like, I got this 15 minutes and then I have to move on because y'all are juggling so much, right? Like the PD or the PD journal is kind of a good example of something you're juggling along with all of the exercises that you need to do, the mythical creature stuff, the project, like, right, that's a lot to juggle. So even doing it for 10 to 15 minutes is better than doing it 0. Cool. And then I liked what Elsa said in the chat. She said, teaching others really does help solidify what you know. If I'm 75% sure and you're 40% sure, we can both learn if we work together. And for me, that means hang out in study hall more. So maybe put that on the calendar, right? I don't have to be in study hall for an hour, but if I go to study hall for 15 to 20 minutes, imagine what I might overhear then, or what problem I might see during that time. That's going to help me when I run into it, down the road. And yeah, I think just in general, teaching it back is one of the most valuable things for learning. Cool. All right, I'm gonna kind of go through these next 2 slides kind of quickly, but this is like this idea of like 4 laws of behavior change. It's like make it obvious, make it attractive, and this is like kind of like goes into some of that what do we call it, the like environment setup kind of thing, like putting some cues around your environment that are going to help like kind of like avoid that procrastination and just like get you right into that next thing that is like you doing the thing. I can't remember who said the tab thing to be the next lesson, but that's a great example of this, right? Like queuing up your environment to be successful for you. Cool. And yeah, then we've got this like response and reward. So this make it easy thing is like, I'll give you an example from this I forget this guy's name. His name's on one of the slides, but basically it's like if I want to, do a habit or create a new habit, it's very difficult to do. So what's a habit that's already in place for me? All right, I brush my teeth twice a day, right? And so twice a day, right after I brush my teeth, this is like a habit chaining technique, but right after I brush my teeth, I'm going to do a push-up. And I don't have to do more than one, but I'm going to do at least one so that push-ups become part of the chaining of brushing my teeth. And even if I do just one, it is a success. I have successfully started to create that habit, and you'll probably do more than one. But if you wanted to, if doing push-ups was your kind of like thing you wanted to do, then that's like a way that you can create this system to be more effective. And then yeah, make it satisfying. Like this is this idea of temptation bundling. So then like bundle in something that you want that is like maybe not as system oriented or successful software developer oriented, but like maybe I get to have like a cookie after that or something like that. Cool. So I think this one just gives you, yeah, this is the inverse. I'm not going to go through these, but it's similar. It's like, all right, like if I I need to stop watching Netflix. Like, one of the great ways to do that is get the TV out of my house, right? Like, get it out, get my ability to watch it out. And then, yeah, you can kind of go through these. Cool. Yeah. And then I think of this idea is like, this like temptation bundling / like making things attractive of like, all right, like I know if I make this something that I really want, then it'll be a lot easier to do and to start doing every day. Not going to talk too much. Yeah. This is, so I've got some, in the slides are some links to some articles that we just don't have the time to do in this session. So we're not going to do them now, but I want to get to the next breakout group. Yep, here's some more like articles. BJ Fogg is the guy I was thinking of. And yeah, I think I would build this into your work time, is like read these before you start writing the prompts, and they'll probably, make writing the prompts a lot easier. Cool. All right. Small group discussion. Let's do it again. So we've got about 10 minutes left. So we'll take about, we'll take like 7 minutes on this, and then we'll share out, and then we'll close out, and that's pretty much it. But the discussion questions are here in the slides. I can drop them in the chat so they're just more readily available. But yeah, I'm going to put you back in the same groups, and then we'll be back at 57. And looks like we're all back. Yeah, Brian and I were just talking about our poor habits as a back-end team, but the habits that you will not have, because you will have the good ones. Okay, so I think in closing, I just want to hear from y'all, really. What are your takeaways from today? Anything you shared in this last breakout session that you'd like the whole group to hear? Yeah. Please volunteer. Yes. Okay. Thanks, Phil. Go ahead.
Cool. Yeah, so in our breakout group, Luke and Boone mentioned that the front end cohort had like a lot of sort of pseudo-structured study hall time with their SLC room. And that was just an idea that stuck with me of something that I hope that we can implement on the back end, because we didn't have that in Mod 1. And it just sounds like a really useful sort of like almost like a lobby that you can use to jump into breakout rooms with your project partner or other people, just to like talk through an idea and hop into that Zoom room and use it as like a home base for group work, and also to interact with people in this more like human to human way. And yeah, Alex mentioned that as well, that it would be helpful for us to implement something like that. So I think we'll maybe try to take that back to our cohort.
I love it. I think that's a great idea to borrow. I would almost even say it's like going to be a necessity at some point for you all as a cohort to lean on each other with that room. And you would have that, you have to think like you would have that room if you were in person at Turing, just by default all the time. So if you don't have it here on Zoom, you're really kind of like limiting yourself of what you could have, I guess, as a cohort study hall. So good job, front end. Back end, come on. All right, Adam, go ahead.
Yeah, one thing we talked about was actually very related to what Phil said. We talked about how sometimes things, there's a lot of grassroots stuff happening in our backend cohort, at least. We had, for instance, I don't know what it's called, but like a Discord, like backend Discord Slack, but then it kind of like fizzled, and no one was like held accountable to like checking up on it. So we talked a lot in our group about like empowering our SLC, not just to focus on like retros at the end of the week, but really like, hold them accountable to, if something like that comes up, like they should, note it. And maybe when we do our retro, bring it up, be like, hey, someone mentioned this, like, how is that going? And maybe keeping things going and kind of empowering them to just be the ones who are accountable for holding us accountable, if that makes sense. We talked about just giving them a little bit more push or responsibility.
Yeah, I like it because that's kind of like, that's a good example of something I would say is something that SLC could build into retro that week. It's like, all right, hey, what do we have? What systems in place do we have right now that are
Did we
working?
lose him?
Oh no,
His
did you lose him?
stunned silence is very.
Oh no, I think my internet might have crapped.
Me again.
Okay, can y'all hear me?
No.
What?
I'm back. All right, good. All right, so I was going to say, this is a good thing for SLC reps because you can think of like, hey, what systems have we put in place? What was the point of this system? Like this example of the Discord. Why do we think it fizzled? And is there a better system that can get us the result that we desired from this system, right? And those are good things to talk about in retro. Okay, I'm a little over 2 minutes. Travis and David are usually pretty understanding. Just let them know I went over, and I apologize. Back end, let's take a break and start at 2:07. Front end, thanks for your engagement and participation. Let them know you haven't had a break and advocate for that palm. All right, that's it. See ya.
Tim, can we stay in this room?
Thank you.
Oh yeah, you can stay in this room. I'm just gonna stop this recording and stop sharing.